Hey, what's up everyone? So, I recently made a video about how modern horror sucks, and I went back and actually rewatched a few films. Overall, I do still think that modern horror has grown too safe and stale, but there is still some great stuff coming out. And for the guy that said Malignant is shit and Hereditary is great, I rewatched Hereditary. I actually kind of liked it better the second time around, but I'm sorry. Malignant is pure gruesome fun. I mean, yeah, Hereditary is presented in a more serious tone, but it's still kind of a ridiculous movie. And the premise is actually just as ridiculous as Malignant. It's just that Hereditary's presentation feels more grounded. I don't think I ever need to see Hereditary again, honestly, but I can watch Malignant, or as I call it, the Matrix Chainsaw Massacre, over and over. So, take that how you will. Anyway, if I'm going to follow up on my statement about modern horror being too safe and tame, I thought I'd take the time to at least extrapolate on that. See, I think modern horror is actually really well made. No, honestly, I actually mean that. Production values are great, cinematography is at an all time high, and lots of modern horror movies these days look gorgeous. Like, yeah, I hated X, Pearl, and Maxine, but they were good looking films. And going back to Hereditary, it's a great looking film. And let's see, Sinners. That was also a beautiful movie. I actually like Sinners. I think I said that in the last video. And I'm not just listing movies I don't like, well, Sinners excluded. So the issue isn't production or quality. I think my issue is content. And honestly, horror just isn't horrific enough for me these days. I'm not trying to be an edgelord. I'm not trying to say that horror movies, aren't scary. Some of them are pretty creepy, pretty scary. I'm not trying to say that nothing scares me. I've been through a lot, so I'll leave it at that. Now, keep in mind these are just my opinions, so disagreeing just to disagree really isn't going to mean jack shit to me. But an open discussion is always welcome. Maybe for some of you, horror is just messed up enough to be scary, but I still think it could go farther. And the best way for me to explain what I mean is by listing some films that are, well, in my opinion, truly fucked up and, in my eyes, more horrific than what we see in what I want to call traditional horror. Some of these movies have horror elements, but I wouldn't label them as something you would see first and foremost in a horror genre. They're more thrillers or war movies, stuff like that. Now, small disclaimer, some of the films I'm going to mention have situations that some people can't handle. And I mean stuff that deals with things that people say they get, I hate to use the word, triggered by. I won't go into detail about what happens in these movies, but I also won't avoid it completely either if it's central to the movie's theme. Some stuff hinges on certain character actions, and I'm gonna talk about it. There's your warning. I'm also not going to add anything that falls under, well, I said before, the traditional definition of horror. So while movies like Human Centipede, Tusk, Audition, and Martyrs are gross and fucked up, they'd just be too easy to add to this list. I'm not just trying to list movies that are meant to be overly bloody and sadistic as the central theme, although Audition and Martyrs actually were pretty good. I'm also not going to add low-quality shock value trash like August Underground or anything by an actual online predator like this director named Lucifer Valentine that filmed actual abuse and passed it off as underground horror. No, fuck that and fuck that guy. I'm going for films that were made with care, were hard to watch, and had a deeper message than just being torture porn like Hostel, while still being engaging. Movies that are sure to tear your heart out while watching it. Hence the artwork that I'm doing for this video. Actually, it's just something I kind of felt like drawing in it was appropriate for the subject matter. Here we go. The first movie I want to talk about that actually came to mind is Salò, or The 120 Days in Sodom. This Italian language movie came out in 1975 and is based on a book of the same name by none other than the Marquis de Sade. De Sade was a French satirist and political activist. The novel for 120 Days of Sodom was a commentary about the upper class of the 18th century and when it was written, and their hedonism and debauchery that went on behind the scenes. In it, there are several depictions of torture that played a part in de Sade's arrest. He didn't actually do it, I'm just talking about what he wrote about. Things like bodily mutilation, sexual abuse of adolescent boys and girls, being forced to ingest all types of bodily fluids, copulation with animals, I mean, the list goes on. But remember, this wasn't and still isn't considered traditional horror. Horrific things happen, but it was to paint a picture of how vile the ruling class was at the time. The 1975 film was updated to take place during World War II in Italy's fascist Republic of Salo, hence why the film is called Salò, or The 120 Days of Sodom. Having read the book and seen the movie's events followed the book surprisingly close while showing as much as they could. A major difference in the movie is that all the captured kids from the book are over 18 in the film. Still, to this day, most modern films that consider themselves to be extreme pale in comparison to Salò. It's not shocking just to be shocking. It may be hard to believe, but the near constant nudity, torture, and gore is actually central to the plot. Yes, sometimes that stuff is needed to be shown for the story to work. This movie gets away with as much as possible without doing any of it for real. Now, there's no actual sex like in Tinto Brass's Caligula, but it gets close. Very close. The entire movie, start to finish, is pretty gut-wrenching. It's not an easy watch if you're only used to modern films. If someone can blend the messed up nature of Salò with modern horror, monster movies, psychological thrillers, whatever, I'd be the first in line to see it. Next up is probably the first movie I saw to leave me speechless, as I had no idea what I was expecting going in. And that's Irreversible, a crime thriller which came out in 2002 starring Monica Bellucci. The movie's plot is told backwards, often combining shots together to give an illusion that time sort of just blends without purpose. I won't give too much away, but it's basically a revenge story. In it, Alex, played by Bellucci, is brutally attacked in a subway station in the middle of the night in a 9-minute long single take scene that feels a little too realistic. What transpires is her boyfriend and her ex actually finding out what happened and going after the guy that they think did it. There's another scene later in the movie involving a fire extinguisher and a guy's skull that shows every crushing slam for like 3 minutes straight, never cutting away. If you have a strong enough stomach, Irreversible has some of the most intense portrayals of violence I've ever seen. And counting every horror movie, that's even Hostel 2. Irreversible stuck with me through, and God forbid I ever have to seek revenge for someone, because even a fire extinguisher to the face for 3 minutes straight wouldn't be enough. Kind of got sidetracked. Even though Irreversible isn't a horror movie, it has some of the most horrific acts, like I said, that I've seen on film. I'm not saying horror movies need to resort to assault like I Spit on Your Grave or The Hills Have Eyes remakes to be good, but the realistic portrayal of violence is what I'm talking about. There was no music, no cheap cuts, no blood splashing off screen with fake screams. It looked real and raw. There was a sense of struggle on both the perpetrator and victim for every scene. Every hit, kick, cut, broken bone wasn't over dramatized. It was unsettling in how mundane it looked, but how effective it came across. I honestly don't think a horror movie made like Irreversible would pass through the censors, if I'm being honest. The closest thing I could think of is the way the cliff suicides were shown in Midsommar, which was the only part of the movie I liked. Even then, it looked fake compared to the brutality of Irreversible. And speaking of looking fake, but being necessary to show for the movie to work, is one that everybody talks about when they mention a list of the most fucked up movies they'd ever seen. A Serbian film. Oh, Jesus. Where do I start with this movie? So in it, a character named Milos is a retired film actor, now living with his girlfriend and her son. One day he gets an offer to star in an adult film, and after some debate, he agrees because his family needs money. They're kind of broke. What transpires, oh man, is a downward spiral into drugs and murder. Basically, the director he's working for is a psychopath, drugging Milos before each shoot so he doesn't remember what happens. And some of these scenes, oh man, they go beyond brutal. Now, a prosthetic penis was used in the movie, so you're going to see some simulated sex acts. Now, was it necessary to do this? Yes. I'm going to say yes. The reason why is that he was sought out for his large size, and it later becomes weaponized. It goes from a tool of pleasure to a tool for abuse. It completely deconstructs who he is as a person, and when he's kind of doing these shoots, it's central to kind of what's happening. The film is also an allegory for the Eastern European porn industry. Horrific things happen, but it's not a horror movie. The feeling the movie portrays is disgust, not really fear. See, even though Milos is doing all these horrible things like trigger warning time, having sex with the girl from behind, then chopping her back open with the machete while still going at it, since they're both drugged up, it's the director that's pulling the strings. A Serbian film is a movie that doesn't shy away from going all in with the portrayal of human depravity. And the end, oh my god. The end is, I'll just say the end is one of the most fucked up things I'd ever seen on film. No traditional horror movie has gotten close to the last, I want to say, 10, 15 minutes of a Serbian film. Boy, if you got the stomach, yeah, it's something else. The last film I want to mention is probably the most depressing film I have ever watched. In terms of sheer bleak tragedy, the Russian war movie Come and See that came out in 1985 takes the cake for human depravity in a different way than a Serbian film. This film follows a boy named Fliora, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Fliora, during the German occupation of Belarus in World War II. This one kind of hit home since my family is from Belarus. Surprise, I actually am the first generation born here. I don't really have any American ancestry. My family is all immigrants, only except for me. Oh, and my brother. Anyway, Come and See is kind of a slow burn movie, but every single aspect of it is seeped in violence and tragedy. So the film follows Fliora as he's forcibly taken from his mother and conscripted into the army. He later deserts and runs into a girl with her own issues while he's trying to head back to find his parents. Along the way, he encounters some of the worst atrocities you can imagine. Oh, I mean, it's World War II. A lot of bad shit happened. It's not heroic in the slightest and shows human nature at its ugliest and most brutal. There's that word again. It showed how children were forced from their homes and conscripted to fight against Nazi invaders. And it shows the Nazis as the brutal barbarians they were, and not like the condescending cartoon villains in movies like Inglourious Bastards. it took their barbarism seriously. It was also unsettling to see how a lot of the violence that happened was because people just thought that's what they had to do, and they had no idea why. Seeing a mass slaughter just abruptly end because people got tired or bored felt all too human. I mean, that's kind of what people do. Sometimes there is no reason behind it. It's the same with seeing random acts of violence, again, for no reason at all, that was so unsettling and scary, which is what made it so realistic. It made sense in how no one was able to make sense of anything. The movie made life feel cheap for each side. And Come and See is not an easy movie to watch. It's probably the darkest film in terms of tone that I'd seen. So, those are just a few of the most horrific non-horror films I think modern horror could learn or borrow from. These are movies that aren't shocking just to be shocking. Their parts all work together as a whole. Some other honorable mentions that I could talk about, but this video would go on for an hour, for most horrific non-horror movies are the British nuclear war movie Threads. There's a French mockumentary about a serial killer called Man Bites Dog, and it's pretty messed up. A movie with the most messed up plot twist to this day, I would say, is the original version of Old Boy. Really, you should watch it. If you've only seen the American version, watch the original version. And the classic Vietnam War movie that popularized Russian roulette, The Deer Hunter. So, that's all for now. I have some new stuff coming out that I'm working on. Been injured. Kind of took a couple weeks off. But if you like what I do and want more from me, please hit that like and subscribe. Leave something down in the comments. I like to respond to everybody, see what you guys think, even if you disagree with me. And I had a couple of people disagree on my last video, which was fine, you know. I don't mind having discussion, but if you're just gonna say like, "No, this is shit," well, that's not really an argument. You're just being a dick. So I will see you guys on the next one.